UFC 308 better than UFC 300? So I do believe the UFC 308 main card is better. Let's take a look at 3 fights on the card. First off, we'll be starting with Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. This might be one of the best featherweight fights of all time. They are both such high-level boxers. The one thing about this fight is, Ilia likes to walk down his opponents and kind of pin them against the cage, and I think it's going to be very hard to walk down Max. So if he can't walk down Max Holloway, Ilia Topuria could start to implement his grappling, and he has such high-level grappling. And if his boxing's not working, he can resort to wrestling and take down Max Holloway. The one thing about Max Holloway is he struggles against shorter opponents because it's harder for him to set up his combinations. And I think Ilia Topuria will be able to start setting up his uppercuts and combinations a lot better than Max Holloway. And Max has never really gotten walking down before. He's usually the higher volume striker, so he usually walks down his opponent. Um, so I think Max Holloway, the only way I can see him winning this fight is to like kind of drown Ilia Topuria in volume. So Max is on a 2-fight KO streak, so I could see him cracking Ilia Topuria. But styles also make fights, and Max Holloway is such a high volume striker. Ilia Topuria is a power puncher. So I'm like so curious to see. So a lot of people are saying that Max Holloway is gonna win because he has a chin and he has a volume to go along with it. But I think that Ilya is a better boxer, and I think he'll be able to out strike Max. And even if he like is not able to outstrike Max, Ilya Topuria has elite grappling. So I think Ilya Topuria is going to beat Max Holloway just on the basis of his grappling. And then on to the next fight on the main card. This fight is probably going to be the #1 contender fight for the UFC belt, and this is a great fight, and I'm really concerned about Chimaev going into this fight. So I'm really concerned about Chimaev gassing out way too early. We saw this get in his way against Usman, where he just goes out, gets the takedown, and tries to finish his opponent and kind of blows his load. But I don't think he's gonna be able to finish Robert Whittaker by submission in the first round. And I think it's a very real possibility that he gasses out, and I think Khamzat is a really good fighter, but he really hasn't shown that elite level. He hasn't beat a real middleweight. He beat Usman on short notice, but he's a welterweight. He beat Gilbert Burns, a welterweight, and he beat Kevin Holland on like a day's notice. I think that his fight against Usman should have been a draw, and he arguably beat Gilbert Burns in his welterweight fight. And Hamzat Chimaev just fights super carelessly, and I think he's gonna gas out. He hasn't been the same since he got COVID, and I think that truly messed up his like lungs and immune system. And if Usman can give you that type of fight without having a camp, I think that Hamzat Chimaev is truly gonna get dominated and maybe even finished in this fight. In the third, fourth, and even fifth round, I think just Robert Whittaker's gonna put some volume on him and maybe even finish him. Robert Whittaker is such a good wrestler, and I think people underestimate his wrestling. I think he can defend those takedowns in like the fourth, fifth, and third round, like I said, and be able to put a lot of volume on him and get a TKO finish. We've seen Hamzat get dropped before against Gilbert Burns, and I think Robert Whittaker has better striking than Gilbert Burns, so I think Robert Whittaker is going to get a TKO in the later rounds in this fight. On to the next fight. It is Gane versus Volkov 2. And I think Gon's gonna win. Gon dominated in the first fight, and I think he's just gonna do the same thing. I think that he's gonna outclass him on the feet. It's only a 3-round fight too, so I think that he's gonna be able to put a ton of volume on Volkov. And I think that we can see Gon have a faster start to his fight. Usually he's a pretty slow fighter. He's like kind of like a Cheeto Vera where he gets going a little bit later. But I think in this fight, since it's only 3 rounds, he's gonna be able to put a lot of pressure on him early, and I think we could see him put Volkov away. I know Gon did look horrible against John Jones, and Volkov's only been evolving since then, but I feel like he has to improve his takedown defense a little bit since that fight. I mean, if he has not been improving his takedown defense, I think he's pretty committed to the UFC, and I hope he has improved his takedown defense. And I think that people really forget how good he is. He's such a good boxer. He's probably the best kickboxer in the heavyweight division. And I definitely think that he's going to outclass Gon on the feet. I don't see Volkov winning. He just doesn't have the striking to win this fight. And I do not think Gon's gonna make that many mistakes on the feet to where he can win. Gon has only lost to the best of the best too. He's lost to John Jones, he's lost to Francis, and those are really two high-level fighters, the two best fighters arguably in the heavyweight division ever. And Gon, he's beat some really good opponents too. People forget how long his kickboxing career was too. He beat Derek Lewis, he had the interim bout, he beat Volkov by unanimous decision when they first fought. But that was like back in 2021, but I still think it's going to be a very similar thing to happen. He outstruck and dominated Gon in that fight. Gon didn't even, I mean, Volkov didn't even attempt any takedowns in that fight. And Gon actually attempted 4 takedowns in that fight, and Volkov did not attempt any. And Volkov did beat Sergey Pavlovich, but I also think Sergey is just very one-dimensional. He beat Tai Tuivasa, but we know like how Tai Tuivasa has. He beat Romanov and Rosenstrike. Those are not high-level wins. Like those fighters are not on the level of Gon. He lost to Aspinall by sub, and he just always came short when he gets those high-level fights. Like I said, he lost to Gon, he lost to Cyril Blades, he lost to Derek Lewis. So if Gon's knocking out Derek Lewis, I think he can knock out Volkov in this fight. The first fight was complete domination by Volkov, and I think it's going to be very similar to how this fight's going to go as well. Then we see Alexander Rakic not getting his title shot. He's been talking a ton of shit about about um about Alex Pereira on Twitter. He's been calling Alex Pereira a chicken. And Rakic think I feel like Uncle Ive thinks he's the champion for some reason. He was calling for Pereira in Abu Dhabi for some reason, acting like he's a champion. And look who he has. Okay, he has not had a good win since 2021. So he beat Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is so chinny, and we've seen that when kind of exposed a little bit. He drawed with Jan. He beat Anthony Smith. So what? Everyone's beaten Anthony Smith. He beat Thiago Santos. So what? He beat Ozdemir. Ozdemir's a good fighter, but that was back in 2021. I mean, Magomed, I think he's gonna get exposed. Rakic is a good fighter. So Rakic did lose to Jan Blachowicz, but he blew out his knee. He can't control that. He lost to Yuri, but that was such a good fight. Go back and watch that fight. That's such a fun fight. So I do think Rakic is going to win this fight. Even though it's a huge upset, I still have to go with Rakic winning the fight. Um, so Rakic can defend his takedowns. He has very good kicks and boxing. We've seen Magomed struggle with the leg kicks before, and I think Magomed um, hasn't beat anyone in the title picture, like I said, and I think he's going to lose this fight to Rakic, and Rakic is going to get back in the win column. I would like to see Rakic maybe versus Yuri again. That was a super fun fight the first time. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with Rakic, probably by decision.